Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Links to live events and their archives are available at sd.net.
It is 9 o'clock and you are welcome to start the meeting when motion takes you.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Call to order the Department of Transportation Commission meeting Thursday, February 26, 2026. Carrie, would you please call the roll?
Chris Spring,
Here.
Lynn Jensen is not joining. Jeff Karam,
Here.
Larry Nelson is not joining. Don Roby,
Here.
Ron Rosenboom,
Here.
Rick Valerie,
Here.
Mike Valley,
Here.
Austin Simons.
Here. We have a quorum. Next item is consideration of conflicts of interest. Is there anyone in the room that would like to declare a conflict of interest? Well, that's easy. Next item, approval of January 29, 2026 meeting minutes. Get a motion.
I also move to approve.
Second. Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any discussion or changes, comments? Being none, we can, what do we call it, not roll call?
Well, you can do a voice vote.
Voice vote, okay, we can voice vote today. All in favor say aye, all opposed say nay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next one is approval of February 12th, 2026 meeting minutes. Can I get a motion for that?
Rose, no, move approval.
Okay, those are approved first. Rickle second. Any changes, comments? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is public input. If you're on the line and wanna address the commission, please address the chair and you will be recognized. Is there anybody on the phone that would like to address the commission? Hearing none, anybody in the room? Easy on public input today. Mr. Secretary, you are up.
Wow, you guys are going fast. Good morning.
Rock and roll.
I don't know if I'll be quite that fast. Start with the federal side. As you know, on February 5th, the president signed all of the appropriations bills except one. And in essence, that does fully fund the federal government and our programs. Overall, when we look at the THUD bill, especially for highways and bridges, the amount of funding will be about 2% above last year, so that's good news that they did that. In that appropriations bill, the THUD bill, there was also a number of congressional directed spending, or as we affectionately call earmarks. I wanted to bring your attention to some of those. Rapid City Airport was approved $20 million for their airport terminal project. Sioux Falls was approved $30 million for their airport project. We, the DOT, was approved $25 million for the Platte Winter Bridge, which is great news. And then the last one is the city of Box Elder was awarded $4 million to look at that corridor of 1416, which used to be Old Highway 1416, Cheyenne Boulevard and Radar Hill Road for some preliminary design to get those sections ready to hopefully reconstruct someday. As you recall, all CDSs have to be administered by the state, so DOT will be involved in these in one form, shape, or a manner relative to that. Again, the current surface transportation bill expires in September of this year. Both the EPW and T&I were hopeful to have their bills out of committee by the end of last calendar year. That did not happen with the federal shutdown and all of the different things that went on with that. We typically go to an event called the AASHTO Washington briefing. We were not able to be there this year just based on what all was going on in the legislative session. But with that, the chairmen of both of those committees provided input, and the chairman of the T&I committee is hopeful that they have their bill out in the end of March. So what that means is that once they get their bills out, there's a lot more opportunities to see what language they're going to have relative to the programs and processes that we'll have to go through. But the key for all of us is what amount of funding are they recommending for that bill, and we're hoping that it's going to be a 5-year bill. So just wanted to put that on your radar screen, and hopefully they do get it out in March. But with that, we've been engaged very heavily with our congressional folks and proposing language and trying to look at the new legislation that would create greater flexibility for us and maintain our formula fund, as well as some increase from an inflationary standpoint, as well as getting rid of some of the red tape, I guess I'll say, for politically correct work. So that's kind of moving on the federal side. No questions, I'll move to the state.
Yep, got
And
one.
yep,
Mr. Valley.
yes, sir.
T&I, remind me what that stands for?
Transportation and infrastructure.
Infrastructure, thank you.
Okay, all
You
right.
get used to these acronyms.
It just didn't
Yeah, that's
come
the
to-
House side, T9, and environmental and public works is the Senate side, Jeff. And went through.
Correct.
Yep. All right, on the state side, as you know, it's been a pretty busy 6 weeks here with the legislative session going on. As you remember, we had asked to have 4 bills filed on our behalf. The one was to combine the commissions that died. right away, but the other three have finally made it through both the House and the Senate, and those have been passed. And definitely expect the governor to sign those three bills for us. Of the remaining bills we've been involved in, a number of them have been amended on our end, which has been good. Others, we were able to defeat. And I've got a list here that I'd like to go through and talk a little more in depth with some of those. For us, the remaining one that we're watching is the general appropriations bill, and as Mr. Valley knows, that commissioner won't be passed until the last day of session, and you know they were changed the revenue projection, which was a good thing I think for all of us, and hoping that and the governor did come out and propose a 1% increase for the three big entities relative to that. So. But all of that is still in the works, and we'll see on that last day what they finally end up with. The one bill that I wanted to mention that was R3 was Senate Bill 71, which was waiving sovereign immunity relative to highway projects, state highway projects that we would be involved in. We have been in communications with Federal Highway, and again, that would give us the authority to take over the National Environmental Policy Act, or the NEPA coordination and the compliance with that. We need to kind of do a little more homework as far as what that physically might look for us to make sure that we're prepared and ready to do that. Eventually, we will need to sign a notice of intent with Federal Highway, and so we're in the midst of looking at that and moving forward with that. If we do it just for what we call category exclusion projects, that process just to get them to approve that is 1 year. If we do it for all of the full oversight, would be a 2-year process. So it's not like tomorrow, now that the bill's signed, we're gonna be able to take over the NEPA assignment. It's gonna take time. Joanne and group is gonna have a lot of work, not a lot of work, but, you know, cause again, the process is really not changing. The only thing that's really modified is at the end, instead of Federal Highway saying, yep, you've met all the requirements of the act, we can do that ourselves. The tribes had a little bit of a concern with this. In fact, the chairman of Crow Creek and an individual up in Cheyenne River Sioux tribe testified against the bill because they felt that the language were such that we were going to take over government to government consultation, which was not the case whatsoever. Based on the way the federal requirements are, they can't delegate that to us, so it's really, in our minds, was a non-issue. When it did get to the House, I had conversations with their lobbyists, and Representative Emery did get up and speak, but he did not speak against the bill. He spoke relative to the government-to-government aspect of things, and you know, more of a FYI to remind legislators of how important the tribes and the relationships are with not only the state but also the federal government. You've got a, Mr. Chairman, he's got a look on his face that maybe I should pause here before I go on to the next bill.
Done
I think the thing for us to understand here is, I mean, this is an efficiency thing for us, we can get it through, I get that, but we do take on a little bit of extra responsibility here, and a little bit of exposure because of the waiver of the sovereign immunity, correct?
Mr. Chair, yes and no. I think if somebody was going to take us to task, we would be in the lawsuit anyway. And again, it's not such that they're looking for a lawsuit for monetary value. It's that you did not follow the process. Maybe we got a project in the Watertown, maybe on I-29, and we were supposed to do a noise analysis. That should have been part of the process. We did not do that, so they could come to us and say, hey, you didn't fulfill the requirement, you didn't do a noise analysis, and then we would have to go back and do a noise analysis to see what that did from an overall effect. So, and Carla and our group would be the ones then that would, in essence, be the legal counsel for us as opposed to the federal government, who really doesn't know our projects and probably not as well versed on the environmental laws than what we are. So I feel very confident that we have that ability and those skills to be able to do that, and I think we'd be much better suited for that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Valley?
It's usually not a monetary, thing we'd get. It could be in the sense that they make us redo it. Would that be, correct? And how many other states do it like that rather than how we're doing it now?
I'll have to phone a friend, but Texas, Nebraska, Arizona, Alaska, and a number of other ones. And they've been doing this now for a number of years. And in fact, we were very apprehensive. I'll just say I was very apprehensive of going this route. But after talking to them, especially Nebraska, they feel that they have shortened up that window of how long this physically takes. And they were just doing the category exclusion, and now they're planning to take on the entire role relative to the NEPA assignment. So after those conversations, I felt very much better. In fact, they had an exchange in Texas here about a month ago, and our staff went down for that and got a lot of great insights. And so I think this is a positive thing for everybody when it's said and done with.
And secondly, are we gonna have more staff that are gonna have to sign off on stuff to make sure we're checking the boxes, as they say now?
Yeah, we don't anticipate a lot of additional staff, but until we go through that gap analysis and look as far as what we might need, I'm not gonna tell you, maybe one, I don't know, maybe none, but, my staff is pretty efficient, but we need to go through that detail just to determine exactly what we might need.
Thank you.
Just side note, if you are on the phone in the meeting, can you please check, make sure your phone is on mute? Thank you.
Two bills relative to, if you recall, a couple years ago, the towns and townships came into you asking for additional funding for the Rural Access Infrastructure Fund, or RAIF. They have two bills now that are doing quite well. Senate Bill 236 will, in essence, allow those funds to be kind of repurposed. So as you know, they go out, they collect the inventory, they send it to DOT. We have a program spreadsheet that we review that, and eventually, based on those numbers, send those to revenue, and then revenue determines the distribution of how much each county should receive based on the total number of those medium-sized structures. What this bill will do will say, all right, if you've got money in your account, County X, and you're not going to be spending it, or you haven't spent it by a certain date, you need to send those funds back to revenue, treasurer, and then they will be redistributed based on the amount of pipes you still have outstanding relative to the overall. And so that did pass and it's moving along, and I'm trying to remember where it's at right now. Passed the Senate, and now it's up in the House Local Government Committee. In fact, it's up today. Senate Bill 240 is in the same category, but it would provide $5 million, appropriate $5 million of general funds to continue this program on. So we'll see where that ends up going with that. House Bill.
We got
Question on that?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Overby.
So if they don't use the funds, they gotta send them back. Those funds they were given out and they're for specific uses?
Correct. It's for a structure, I believe it's 16 square feet opening minimum, up to 20, for what is defined as a bridge. So it's in those middle range from a pipe culvert situation to replace those. And so they go out, they've done the inventory again, we receive that information, and then based on the total number, how many they have per county divided by the total number, that's the distribution that they would receive. So as these funds are then sent back, they're gonna do a new calculation, figure out still what's outstanding, and the county would then receive those funds for those specific structures that are still needing to be replaced. And I believe, I didn't bring the bill, but this would be done at a 3-year interim, so that if I'm a county and I've got a project plan that's going into the design, I haven't let it yet, it gives me still an opportunity to get it awarded and out the door before then I have to send the money back to get this repurposed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Valerie.
Go ahead.
Question.
Just a couple questions, cause I'm a little confused.
That's the first time I've done that to you, I know.
Yeah, correct. The monies are sent to the counties, and then the counties ship the money based on the project to the townships? Or do the county do who does, is there contract bid awards for the work to be done?
Mr. Chairman, there's a variety of this. Some of it will be contracted and some of it may be done with their own forces. And the counties are eligible for the same funding. So you've got the township structures as well as the county structures that are in that mix for that geographical location in that county. And so I'll pause there.
No, that explained it. I didn't realize the counties were eligible as well. I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Valley?
Boy, this gets me back into a long time ago.
Sure you wanna go there, Commissioner?
So the counties then decide how much money is available then for the townships, and can they, how's a nice way to say it, keep more of the money and not delegate it out to the townships to do theirs and let the townships set? That's one question. The second one, can I be saving up to be doing, I know if I do one project, it's gonna cost me more, but I've got 5 of these things that I need to do, and if I can save up a little money, I know that if they come in here, I can get these 5 done cheaper than if I do them one at a time. Does that's always I mean, we have that issue too when we let out bids, so that's why I was wondering.
Mr. Chairman, for your first question, it definitely is local control, so the county is the one deciding which projects are gonna get funded for those particular years. For your second question, let me read what the bill says. So it would require unspent funds that have not been contractually obligated by the counties to be transferred back to the state treasurer and then redistributed every 3 years. So these funds will need to be budgeted through the general appropriations bill. And then, so that's kind of how that process will work. So, I don't know if that answers your second question.
I think I gotta get out of the legislative mode and get back to thinking like, we're on the commission now, I see issues.
Mr. Chairman, no comment on that one?
Mr. Chair.
Got
Next.
another question?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I've thought of another question, so, this has to do with the original 25 million that was given to them 4, 5, 6 years ago? Okay, so. Okay, the counties must have been audited. Were there examples given of surplus funds not being spent?
Mr. Chairman, so that was the issue. These funds were still in counties' accounts, and they were not being planned, from my understanding, they were not being planned to be spent. And so they're saying, all right, let's take those funds and bring them back in to give the other counties the opportunity to get these spent.
Okay,
Because as you know, there was a sunset 4
Yeah.
years after the last bill that they were going to, in essence, be gone and would have to eventually come back into the state coffer, general funds. Okay.
thank you.
House Bill 1297 was a bill that would have requested $125,000 of general funds to do a study, statewide needs study for transit and the economic impact that public transit has. Working with the sponsor on that bill, we were definitely not in favor of that, and the reason is what we have our own research program, and I committed that we would do the study out of our normal research program and not have to go through all of the legislative general, whatever else. So that bill got pulled, and so we're moving forward with that research project. Last bill is House Bill 1295. It was to revise provisions for the acquisition of highway easements and rights-of-way. As you know, you can tell by the name of the bill, it definitely was targeted of how DOT acquires property, especially easements, and would have forced us to change how we acquire those. We were successful in defeating the bill in the House Transportation Commission. And in our minds, the bill would have really created some very numerous negative effects. In the testimony that I provided, which our attorney Shane had, they actually amended the bill And as part of that amendment, we felt that it was going to remove your authority to condemn under the chapter that's defined in there. And so that was very problematic for us, and it would also have required us to come to you for every parcel that we desire to purchase, come to you for permission on that, which would have meant about 700 resolutions on a yearly basis that you would have done. So that would have a lot of paperwork that we did not feel that was good. So anyway, that bill ended up getting sent to the 41st day. I don't know if we're done hearing on that issue, but at least hopefully for this legislative session. My last,
Commissioner Valley?
You say it went to 41st day in committee?
yes, sir,
Okay.
House Transportation Committee.
Okay, just so it didn't get to a floor. Okay.
You heard, I believe it was last week, there was an announcement in Sioux Falls with the governor and the mayor for the Smithfield location where they're physically looking to relocate out of Sioux Falls and go to the north of I-90 in the industrial park out there. We've had a planning study in the works now for about a year or so on the Crooks Renner interchange. And so we've already started looking at what the needs would be for that interchange. This development will now have to fold into that study. We've been working with City of Sioux Falls. Steve Graham is our main point contact with that. I believe the consultant is finalizing a traffic impact study that will go then into what we have to eventually determine exactly what is needed, both opening day as well as in the future, the next 20 years, relative to the traffic volume, and that all of that development will take place here sooner than later. With that, if there's any improvements that we need, you will see that in a eventual STIP for your consideration and approval later on with that. So I don't know if there was any other questions that you guys had with.
Commissioner Valerie?
I just got one question, because I reviewed the plan, and I know that we don't have the same time frame, but that particular interchange has a current plan of 3-4 years from now, and then a 20 or 30-year plan. And the 20-year or 30-year plan was for a diamond. And I was just curious if that needs to be moved up, but we don't know that because we don't have the traffic study done. Is that correct?
Sure, that's exactly correct. And whatever timeframes, and we've kind of got out in the long run at this point in time. If it shows that we need to move that interchange work up, again, that'll come to you folks for consideration and eventual approval relative to that. But I think it's too early to tell. And you are correct, right now with the diamond, and we're looking at modified kind of a diamond, and I think another option was a DDI and those things, but we're not ready to say exactly what's needed yet until we get that traffic impact study and truly understand what the traffic's gonna be there. Mr. Chair, that's all I have for you today.
Okay, thank you.
Go
ahead.
Except at the end, I put on there as an informational item, if you don't go too long and you'd like to, for me to go through the presentation that we gave to the House and the Senate Transportation Committees, we've got that ready to go, and I'll be prepared to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda, Craig Smith, Director of Operations. Is Craig on the line?
Good morning, I am, yeah. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Craig Smith, Director of Operations. Have just the one item, the informational construction change order report, attachment number 3. And the month of January, we had 8 change orders that either were an increase or a decrease of $100,000, as well as we have the one change order labeled number 2 that was an increase of over 25% on the report. For the total month, there was a total increase for all CCOs, just a little over $700,000. Didn't see anything significant to report, but certainly willing to answer any questions on any of those on the attachment number 3.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Next, Mike Beam, Director of Planning and Engineering.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. P&E has 5 items for your consideration, the first of which is the bid awards. Mr. Wisegraham's on the phone, he will address the commission on that. Mr. Keys will handle the right-of-way items, I'll be here for the STIP revisions. Mr. Kinneberg will handle the big applications, and I'll be back for the transportation alternative projects. Sam, you still on?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sam. Morning.
All right. Yeah, good morning, Chairman, members of the commission. Sam Wisegram with the Office of Project Development here to present the bid results for the February 18th bid opening. That should be attachment 4. That bid opening on February 18th consisted of 7 contracts. 44 bids were received for those 7 contracts. The low bids totaled $5,841,000, which was $2,348,000, or 28.7% below our engineer's estimate of $8,190,000. We did complete our review of the bids for the February 18th bid opening and just have one recommendation for you involving all 7 projects. Projects 1 through 6 were all more than 10% below estimate. Project number 7 was within 10% of estimate. Based on the favorable bid results and our review of the low bids, we are recommending approval of the award of these contracts.
Okay, thank you, Sam. All right, the recommendation is for approval of projects 1 through 7. Commission get a motion.
So moved.
O'Beal first, Valley will second. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Rosewood?
Sam, I'm just kind of wondering if you can shed a little light on the competitiveness of the pricing on these. Obviously we like to see this, but a year ago we were looking at increases about this much, and I imagine oil's a little cheaper, so that might affect the asphalt. But just kind of wondering if you have any insight on bids.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We have seen, sorry, I'm getting some feedback here, but we have seen, obviously, if you look at the bid results, the number of bidders we're getting per contract, where our competition has certainly increased. If like, for example, on job 1, I believe we had 9 bids for jobs 1 and 2, which was the project through Toronto, the community of Toronto there. But yeah, we have seen prices actually stabilize and in some cases come down. I think that kind of comes back to, the stabilization of commodity prices that we've seen here. And over the last year, we had that extreme inflation that kind of occurred following the COVID with the supply chain issues and everything else. And we've seen that stabilize. And I think that's allowed, improved, the contractor's ability to provide a price with certainty without having to worry about all the volatility with that stabilization. So that's helped. I think there's also some of the private sector stuff we've heard some feedback that's kind of cooled off, and of course that frees up labor and equipment resources and everything else that goes with it. So just a variety of factors, but yeah, this is some of the best competition we've had in some time. Oil prices, again, you mentioned that's another thing that's helped with our asphalt pricing. So variety of factors playing into this, and ultimately getting great competition and great bids. So not sure if I'm answering your question fully, but it's not necessarily a single answer. There's a variety of factors playing into it.
Yeah. You answered the question, Sam. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add.
Thank you.
I talk with Mark Cotter, who's Public Works Director in Sioux Falls, on a regular basis, and they're seeing the same thing. Just one bid that was, I believe it was on Marion Road, where they're building an overpass over the railroad. That bid was incredible, lower than what their engineer's estimate was, and so he was to go pink, but I think if you're seeing that statewide, which is a good thing for the public.
Commissioner Valley?
And he said it and I was writing and I didn't get it. Why was the reason that we have so many more bidders available to bid? I mean, we look at all these It's been a long time since we've seen this long a list of the number of people out there, and will that change? Will we, is there less things to bid on, so they're more hungry, and will they then start getting into other lines of business and not be here? Or, or is other states not doing something, or, well, what, I didn't catch what he said there.
I think Sam is the best one to answer that. I can guesstimate, but I shouldn't do that. Sam?
Yeah, sorry if didn't explain that very well, but I think, yeah, once again, I think there's a variety of factors playing into this. We have seen, the feedback we're getting is there is some slowdown in the private market, which of course frees up labor resources in some of these same contractors that we see on our projects. Not only bid our public highway improvement contracts, but they also are involved in developments and things of that nature. So maybe some of that's playing into it. Other states are seeing competition, like our surrounding states. We've noticed that the bid results on their projects are similar to ours here recently, where they're getting very good competition. I think some of that could be there's talks of some of that maybe is playing into the the future uncertainty with what's going to happen with the next highway bill, and contractors wanting to make sure they have a backlog of work and whatnot if there is something that happens there. So I think there's a variety of factors that play into this, and ultimately, we're, like Joel mentioned, it's not just us seeing this improved competition. We're seeing it in surrounding states, and like Joel mentioned, the city of Sioux Falls and others as well. We're all seeing this improvement. So don't really have all the answers to exactly why it's happening so quickly, but I think there's a variety of factors that contribute to this situation.
Okay, my concern is that sometimes things swing like a pendulum, and I'd rather see that pendulum even out. I don't want to see it go all one way and then all of a sudden it comes back the other way and we're back to two bidders and higher than we thought. That's a reason for my concern.
Sure, and really it's not only the market that's out there, but also what is that long-term result relative to funding overall. And I think for us, it's definitely that surface transportation bill, and if you get a 5-year bill, that does provide some certainty for these contractors relative to what jobs might be out there in the future, especially what's going to be appropriated. I mean, if the money dries up, you have that pendulum, which is not good for anybody, especially for our contractors. So hopefully that will solve part of that unknown too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Just a quick comments. Good to see a lot of South Dakota contractors on the awards, so that's good. We have a motion on the floor for approval for 1 through 7. If you're in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Sam. Mr. Keys, you are up on right away.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, John Keys, Right-of-Way Office Program Manager. I have for your consideration today just one right-of-way item. Item number 1, we are requesting approval to transfer right-of-way to the city of Rapid City. As in most cases, when we are looking to transfer right-of-way to a municipality, there's already an agreement in place. And that's the case here with between DOT and the city of Rapid. There's an agreement, and that is part of your packet. So the agreement's number 612770. It should be at the end of your right-of-way item number 1 packet. So among other items, this agreement spells out the terms that the state would acquire the necessary right-of-way for the construction of Concourse Drive, and this has all been previously completed, and then that the state would then transfer this to the city of Rapids. So a little bit of background on this. So this segment of Concourse Drive was constructed as part of a larger project for Highway 16B. 16B, also referred to, I believe, as the Southeast Connector. Locally, it's Elkvale Road, but when you're coming into Rapid, on I-90 headed west, this would be exit 61, the first exit coming into Rapid. And if you turn south, you're on 16B there, so. Concourse Drive, so this segment of it was constructed as a full access signalized intersection. Prior to this project, Concourse Drive only existed, if you look at the exhibit there, to the north, and 16B is kind of at an angle there, so it'd be kind of on the northwest side of 16B, that's where Concourse Drive was. This project created an additional segment of Concourse Drive on the other side of it, so then it became a full intersection there, and which is signalized now in this project. So that's kind of what drove the need for this segment of Concourse Drive, was to provide a full access intersection there. And just to kind of get the lay of the land there, just to the west side of this is kind of a large residential neighborhood, Rapid Valley. So this kind of provided full access to 16B there with the reconstruction of that. So this request to transfer right of way, it only consists of 3 parcels. If you look at that Concourse Drive, there's lot H1 containing 61/100ths of an acre, lot H4 1.09 acres, and lot H5 72/100ths of an acre. So again, we have previously entered into an agreement to transfer this, but anytime we transfer property rights, that's always subject to the commission's approval. So that's the reason for the request this morning. So with that, the request for your consideration is for approval to transfer lot H1, lot H4, and lot H5 as legally described in item number 1 to the city of Rapid City.
Okay.
No questions. Move approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval.
Second.
We have a second. Jeff? Any questions?
One quick one,
Go ahead.
on the to-do page, everybody did their to-dos,
Correct.
the city and the state, so no complaints, we're everybody's happy, okay?
This is the, Mr. Chairman, this is the last to do right here, is to get
Okay.
approval.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor say aye. Opposed say nay.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, on a personal note, I was the original designer of the Southeast Connector and then eventually engineering supervisor. So we are getting these things finally cleaned up and passed on, and hopefully, I'm not sure how many we have left, John, but before I retire.
We can drag them out quick.
That wasn't my point.
So moved.
Mr. Beam? You're up.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. 2 revisions for your consideration. First of which, Secretary Junt touched on that one earlier. That's congressionally designated spending, or the earmark, with Box Elder. So that's to get that project in the STIP, so you can start moving forward with that one. The second one is based upon the action by the commission in January 26th for the Lemon SIB loan. So 2 revisions requesting your consideration to approve, revision number 14 and 15.
Okay, recommendation is for approval for Rev 26-014 and Rev 26-015. Motion.
Approval.
Roby will move. Have a second.
Karam second.
Caramel second. Okay. All in favor say aye, opposed say nay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just the 3 informational revisions for you, just a little background on that first one. City of Colton actually ended up getting some funds through Banner, I believe, to do some utility upgrades. They want to advance this one so they can make time for utility upgrades. The second one, we originally anticipated about 100 miles. We got about 189 miles of rumble strip on that one, so that's why we see the price increase. That is on asphalt roads too, by the way, not on concrete roads, so if there are any questions on that. Last revision information was just to add some more extensive erosion control work that we anticipated. A little bit of rock excavation needs to be done and some pipe replacement, so that price went up based upon final plans and quantities.
Okay, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kinnenberg, I believe you're up.
Mr. Kenneberg? Where's the big applications?
I do have some handouts for you. Chairman, members of the commission, Doug Kinneberg, local government assistance with the administration program division planning and engineering. I'm pleased to bring you 2 recommendations to complete the award of the available funding for the 2026 cycle of the grants. As some of you may recall, last August you awarded 24 preliminary engineering bridge improvement grants for approximately $1.48 million. The advertised $15 million that we have available for the grant cycle. By the end of the calendar year 2025, we've been able to fully close out 514 of the 621 grants that we've awarded to date for this program. And with those closures, we have identified an additional $4.3 million in unused grant funding that we're recommending applying towards new grant recipients. This adjustment provides opportunity to award just over $17.8 million with today's recommendations. So per our established procedure, we received 14 applications for bridge improvement grant work and 57 applications for the bridge rehab replacement work. And if I may bring your attention to the first of the 2 handouts, a single page handout. These identify the 14 preservation improvement grants applicants listed in alphabetical order. If I can bring your attention to the column second from the right, it says grant amount recommended up to the nearest 100 on those. We've identified 12 of the 14 grant, or sorry, 11 of the 14 grants that have numbers identified in there. And this is our recommendation to award these 11 recipients for a total of $6.492 million on those. Part of the process when we review these, we had 11 of our department's engineers subjectively evaluate the criteria for these, in addition to a standard application review that we do, taking a look at user impact, which is a formula used in the functional class, the detour length, ADT. We also look at provide a score for the level of wheel tax that a county might apply to the program, and a score for the local financial commitment, which is any increase in the 20% required match. Our engineers that review the program, they also take a look and see if they determine it's a quality project, and it could be a successful one, and that's how we end up scoring and ranking these out. So that ultimately is our recommendation for these 11. And if I may, I continue on with the second one, and then you can decide whether you want to take these individually or together. So the second handout shows the 57 applications for the structure replacement major rehab program. And these are scored by their big score, which is an objective scoring criteria. The highest ranking is identified on this handout, being listed on the top. The big score, it's again, it's an objective scoring procedure where 50% of that score is based on bridge conditions as reported in the National Bridge Inventory. 20% is based on that user impact, and the final 30% is based on the local financial planning. And again, that's the level of wheel tax, whether the plans are prepared as bid review ready. And on this handout, I have identified with an asterisk on the item number, so you can see which ones that have submitted in as bid review ready for those. And then the final component of the financial component of the score is whether they increase their match over the required 20%. So this far right column in this handout also shows a grant amount that we are recommending for award, and as you can see, the top values are there for the top 10 applicants. And this is our second recommendation to award grants for 2 structures in Lawrence County, one in Pennington, one in the city of Yankton, one in Dual County, 2 in Grant County, 1 in Minnehaha, 1 in Meade, and 1 in Sanborn County. So again, I'd like to leave it to you if you want to take separately or together on one motion, but our recommendations are to approve all projects except 4, 8, and 13, as shown on the handout for preservation applicants, and to add these to the current STIP by revision, and to approve the top 10 scoring applicants as shown in the handout for replacement rehab, and to add these to the current STIP by revision. I'll stand by for any questions.
You guys wanna take a second?
Just one question, if I could. Go ahead. Why did we not approve like the 4, 8, 13?
So again, part of our review process is we take a look at some of the quality of the project, and if we determine if it's gonna be a successful one. I can say, for example, on the number 4 applicant, Brown County, that particular applicant didn't pass our initial screening process. And one of the requirements of the program is that the application or the structure in question has to be listed in the county 5-year plan. In this case, it had not been vetted at the local level and had that discussion and wasn't identified in their 5-year plan. So as a discussion with that applicant, they have reluctantly had to pull the application to work through that process and have that discussion locally. But again, that some of these are our initial screening process, and another is the viability and score. Ultimately, if you were to look at the ones that we did not make recommendations on, we again go through and try to score these out, again, off both of our objective and subjective criteria. And if we determine that there's a chance that the project might not be successful, that might score low. And the other thing to take into consideration is that we had over $10 million worth of applications here. And ultimately, we had to draw a line somewhere going down the list on projects that we felt were certainly beneficial to do preservation work on versus how much money did we put towards the replacement program. If we had more funding, yeah, ideally we would be able to award more in both categories.
Commissioner Valerie?
Doug, in your opening comments, you made a comment that we have extra money and then you found approximately $3 million. Could you explain a little bit more how that was located, or is that from projects that didn't end up doing, or where's it from?
So each year when we award these grants, we set a grant cap on the amount that they're asking for. And generally, these are very conservative amounts. They don't want to be cut short, because any cost that ends up going above the grant application amount, the locals have to pick up that cost at 100%. So we've seen some of the costs inflated, in their application, not to the point where we question that and saying that, we can't give you $10 million for something we feel is going to be a $2 million project. But generally, they tend to be on the high end of our estimates when we do the grant amounts, and then they go through and do the projects. And as you guys had discussed with the state's bid openings, we also have seen some better prices on these projects locally. So as they get let, we close out the grant. Okay, we've identified this amount of grant funds were not utilized on that project. At the end of each year, we've done a process where we again go through and make sure we close everything out, and these ones are done. There's no more expenditures on that, and then I identify any unused grant funds, and I've tallied those up, and we've discussed on, all right, if with this amount of money, we can do this project in preservation, or we can do this project in, another project in the replacement, and, just kind of looked at how far down each list can we go in reusing some of that unused grant funds.
Follow up, go
So you made a determination to put some in the preservation and some in the big projects, and that's fine. But, I mean, was that like a 50-50 or 75-25 or what process did you use?
Well, initially, when we take a look at these and have that discussion, again, we're trying to do as much preservation work as we can, because we really want to catch those projects that are still in good and fair condition and keep them in good and fair condition before they drop into doing the worst first, which is what our replacement program really is addressing the ones that score the highest, or those are the ones that are generally in the worst condition. So it's kind of a little bit of a numbers game and taking a look, all right, what's the next applicant in line for, based off of our scoring processes, can we look at awarding that? And like I had mentioned on the preservation ones, we look at one of the Turner County projects, for example, that we were able to make a recommendation on one, but not the other one. That other one was a request for, $1 million. So if we had that availability and extra funds, then that we take that into consideration on how far down the list we can go. Had we not had the extra $4 million in unused funds, we certainly would have had to draw these lines considerably higher in both categories.
Okay, any more questions? Mr. Valley?
I missed something here. You said you had 15 million available, I think, for this year, and you had 4.3 million unused. And then we had and then you said we had 17.2 million in these bids. And I'm just, that doesn't quite add, so maybe help me out there.
Mr. Chair, so each year when we start off our grant program, we start those off with our preservation applications in August. So we started at a baseline of $15 million. There's $8 million that the commission has elected to put into the grant program, and $7 million that is established by statute to go into the fund from the license plate fees. So that $15 million base, we make an award of the preservation grants, which was the $1.48 million that we did last fall. That left us with a little over $13 million to bring in. Again, when we take a look at what we have for unused obligation funds.
I didn't catch that 1.48
Okay.
in the fall.
Yes.
So that's where I was wondering where.
So we take that into consideration and move the numbers on forward.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's preliminary engineering, correct, Doug? Preliminary engineering, correct?
Yes.
That's what we do in the summer, not preservation.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I misspoke on that.
Those are design grants.
Any other questions?
And
Follow up.
on mine, the improvement grants, who were the recipients of those?
So the recipients of the preservation grants, is that what you're asking about? The 14 applicants?
Preservation, yes.
So it would be the 3 projects in Aberdeen.
So all down through 11?
No, it would be excluding number 4 Brown County, excluding number 8 Pennington County, and excluding number 13 Turner County.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Go ahead.
And on the asterisk is, I see, it's up by the numbers. Okay, got it. All right, now I see it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we can take them both together. So the recommendation from the department is, on big preservation is projects 1 through 14 minus 4, 8, and 13. Say that right? Fine. Okay. And then on the bay replacement rehabilitation is 1 through 10. I'll second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay? Motion carries. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Mr. Beam, you are next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just clarification, I want to make sure that that last motion also allowed us to include those projects in our STIP. Was that the intent?
That was the intent, yes.
Say that again, sorry.
The last motion would allow us to add those to our current STIP as well.
Make an additional motion.
Perhaps that would help.
Mentioned previously.
Otherwise, we'll have to come back to add these
Right,
in.
so that-
Mr. Chairman, I move that those projects that was discussed with the big and the preservation be added to the STIP.
Now in a second.
A second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Good
members.
work there.
I believe we're on transportation alternative program, projects. As you get the handouts, please take one, pass one down. A little background on the TA program. Usually in July of each year, we require potential applicants to submit a letter of intent to apply. From that process, our team goes out, does inspections, and has conversations with the community that is requesting the TA grant. From there, an application is pulled together. That application is provided to the department. The applications are reviewed by a TA recommendation committee as required by law. That committee includes individuals from State Historical Preservation Office, Local Transportation Assistance Program, South Dakota Municipal League, tribal partners, and also South Dakota Association of County Commissioners, along with their own technical staff that helps to review those. The handout I provided you, you'll see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of recommendations for you. Those highlighted in blue are projects that were recommended through the recommendation committee. I would like to draw your attention to page 2. That is in a what I'll call peach, because I'm not very good with color description. Kind of an orangish peach color. That project was not recommended by the recommendation committee. However, the department does feel there is a benefit to move forward with a portion of that project. So those of you familiar with Harrisburg, just south of Sioux Falls, the request was to add an 8 and a 10-foot wide shared use path from South Dakota 115 going back off to the east past their school. The department reviewed this and we are recommending a modification to that. We have coordinated back with Harrisburg regarding this. And the recommendation from the department would be to install a path from South Dakota 115 to Tiger Way on the north side of the road. So just a portion of it, approximately 1/3 of the original request. There's currently a path that exists from Tiger Way further off to the east, so this would provide connection along 115 over to the school and back further off to the east. So again, I just want to bring that to your attention. The recommendation committee also did not recommend on page 3 funding for the project in Platte. This project, when reviewed, would go a little over 2.5 miles south of Platte and tie into New Hope Christian Camp and Retreat Center. Transportation Alternatives Program is really intended to provide an alternate mode of transportation for individuals in urban or communities, so that there is that path that people can use as a transportation mode. Due to the seasonal nature of this location and not necessarily functioning as a true transportation network, perhaps more of a recreational component, the committee and department also recommended that Platte would be not funded through this. So, Mr. Chairman, the department is requesting your consideration on approval of all projects with the exception of project number 11 and a modification to project number 5 in Harrisburg. That grant amount would be approximately $600,000 for that particular project. We'll still need to refine the cost estimates on that. So that with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand by for questions.
Okay. Can we get a motion on the floor?
Karen moves to approve.
Okay. Motion for approval, Rosenblum will second. Questions? Make it easy on you, Mr. Beam. Oh.
Well, it's been a tough 4 or 5
Valley.
weeks.
Mr. Valley. Almost.
Do we do this once a year, twice a year, how often do we do this?
Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the selection and coming to the commission is once a year. Yep, it's through the work that starts in July, going out visiting with communities, then they'll put together an application. Applications are reviewed, and then we usually come to you in that January, February timeframe with the annual allocation.
And how do we get the money? This is federal money, is there a match?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, yes, there is a match. It's approximately $81.95 federal aid and then 18.05%, 20% match, like their term, 20% match for our local governments or whomever is the applicant for these funds. And it's a dedicated amount that comes to the federal bill. IIJA says, nope, need to spend it in this area. That's why you see the population breaks that are in here. There's one for the over 50,000, the 5 to 50, and then the under 5,000. So you see that's why there's three different groupings and three different pages on this. Page 1 is our larger communities, page 2 is our medium-sized communities, and then page 3 through 4 are small communities.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, if not, we have a motion on the floor for approval. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Chairman?
Thank you. I think we have time for the informational.
Okay, you wanna take a quick break and all set up and we'll maybe 5 minutes and go?
Sounds good.
Those listening online, I am gonna put the phones on mute. For those in the room,
Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Download the SDNet app to your mobile device and listen wherever you are.
Mics are back open again, and you are welcome to start whenever you would like.
The wolves that were in that movie came off their ranch.
And so, yeah.
I don't have Aldridge, but anyway, he vacated down there to Arizona to look at. Life's good, guys. A lot of fun.
A lot of horses up north, there's a lot of horse ranches up there. Close by.
All right, we're back.
Mr. Chairman, if you're ready, I feel like, during the legislative session, the legislators have an opportunity to do personal privilege. I don't know if Jeff would like to do that today.
Sure, I could do that now. Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Okay, so yes, just ask for a personal privilege here. I'm joined by a guest today. My daughter, Sienna Karam, has joined. She is, I guess, I don't want to speak for her, but she is a freshman at St. Thomas More High School in Rapid City, and had a particular interest in seeing government and work in Pierre. So I'm happy to have her.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
So back in the day, then Senator Valley required the department to mandated a briefing to the House and Senate Transportation Committees. So that is the briefing that I will give you today, and I want to make this as informal as whatever. So if you've got questions as I'm going through this, please stop me and we'll go from there. It truly is a great opportunity for us to get this presentation to them, to deliver it and have them a little more in tune as far as what's going on from a transportation aspect. And so it's something we look forward to every year. I won't go through the individuals, but this is our team that works during legislative session. Shane Pullman is our attorney that has been involved in this now for the last couple years, and it really has helped us from the legal side, getting bills reviewed, a bill analysis done, and those types of things. So the outline that I'll go through is we'll talk a little bit about the structure. We've got performance measures, again, that we're required to present on and discuss, and then I want to talk about the revenue and funding of the different four modes of transportation that we work very closely with. So this is our org chart, and you guys definitely have seen this in the past, and you're the Transportation Commission, but we also work with the Aeronautics Commission, the Railroad Authority, and the Railroad Board, and you truly understand what your roles are, so I'm not going to spend time on that. But the Aeronautics Commission, the major areas, this is definitely not all of it, but they provide state match for the FAA projects. That's 2.5%. So overall, those two projects typically run in the neighborhood about $45 million on an annual basis. They also provide funding for the fuel taxes, so that's $15,000, and then they provide funding for educational activities and different things like that. The State Railroad Board, who met yesterday and had discussions on the Napa to Platte line, you can see really their key things is to really manage and oversee our state-owned rail lines, and I'll go into those later on. And that includes whether we're doing weed spraying and those types of things, but they have to approve those contracts. And then as we've sold some of our state assets, they're the major player who decides whether or not they want to sell that based on what those proposals are. And then we also receive funding from FRA because we do not have passenger rail in the state. We receive about $27 million a year for freight rail, and they have a call for projects. Eventually, when we get notified that those opportunities for the funding are out there, those are dedicated funds to South Dakota. And so all of the the truly relative aspect of that is that they have to just meet the eligibility requirements. We're not competing with other states for this 27 million. It is dedicated earmarked for South Dakota. So here are some of the performance measures that I will go through, and you've definitely heard a number of times we talk about highway safety. We use the safe systems approach relative to what we're looking at, all of those different principles that you have up there. The 6, and you've heard us say this many times, over 90% of the crashes that are occurring out there are driver behavior. But as we're looking at this wheel and looking at all of those different things, it's a matter of what can we do relative to with you on the transportation side, but also working with DPS on the behavioral side, working with the tribes, working with everybody else to ensure that we're reducing the overall crashes with that. You can see the chart on here. The great news is that this year they were fatalities were down about 20% as compared to 2025, which is great news. On the flip side, current year to date, we're back up again. So, I mean, our goal is to keep this trend going negative to the negative degree, which is a positive thing, but it's all of us working together and collaborating on that, and hopefully those numbers reduce down here in the next number of months. Well, definitely towards that trend overall. When we talk about pavements, you know that our biggest asset, our largest assets is our pavements. The monetary value of that is about $20 billion, if you put a number to it. So for the department, this is probably our biggest and one of the highest things that we do from an administrative standpoint. As you know, we've got about 8,800 miles on the state highway jurisdiction only. So you can see if we had our ultimate desire, this would be where we'd like to see all of those pavements fall in, because we know that once we have a project done and it's brand new, eventually that's going to start to deteriorate, and we want to maintain it and we want to keep it in good to fair condition as long as possible. But we all know that at some point in time that pavement is going to die and we need to physically reconstruct it completely. And that's why we've got the 5% up there. Those pavements, we're just trying to maintain them so they're in a safe condition, knowing that we've got something in the STIP, we're going to completely replace that and revise it. So here is our chart relative to our target. We were wanting 80% to be in the excellent to good condition. And as you can see, we have been meeting that. And again, with Senate Bill 1 back in 2015, changed the gas tax from 22 cents to 28 cents, and the excise tax went from 3% to 4%. But you can see also that we are projecting that we will no longer be able to maintain that performance measure at 80% in out years starting in about 2027. Things are going to start to deteriorate. Again, a big aspect of this is how much are we going to receive in the federal side from a federal funding. About 70% of our construction program is relying on federal dollars. So, yes, sir.
I haven't heard anything about this lately, but I know in the past you were able to give us some perspective on how that compares to other states.
I don't have that data, Commissioner, but as you've heard, in fact, you sent an email, we were rated number 2 nationwide relative to the condition of our roads. Us, as well as numerous other states, are seeing their state funds, purchasing power going down. I'll have slides on that later on, but we're all kind of struggling to keep it up to a level that we desire, but I'm not sure in the future if some things don't change relative to the funding, we're going to be able to maintain, all of the states are going to be maintaining that. Other surrounding states, I've had these conversations with them and they're in worse shape than we are. So it's gonna hit it is being an issue, and it will continue to be here in the near distant future. So again, waiting for that surface transportation bill to come out here, hopefully get passed by September. We'll have a little better crystal ball as far as what that might look like for us in the future. But we're having those conversations with the governor and as well as others, especially you guys, of what that might look like in the future. Moving on to the bridge side real quick, you see 2 charts here. One is for the percent of the deck area and the conditions of it based on the deck area, and the other is for the total number of structures. And again, this is only state highways only. This does not include any local governments. Our So our biggest challenge is gonna come into the next 5 to 10 years, and that is, and we've discussed this, is the major structures over the Missouri River. We have 5 of those that are going to be coming due in the next 5 to 10 years. Those are listed up on top. The first one will be at Forest City, which is on 212 west of Gettysburg. We're anticipating that will cost us $400 million. After that will be the bridge at Mulbridge on 12. We're looking at $313 million on it. I-90 bridge at Chamberlain, Oklahoma is projected to be in the $300 million. And then we've got the Singing Bridge up on 1806 north of Mulbridge. It's about 218. All total about $1.5 billion. So that's a big number, and we realize that. But again, we're looking at further conversations during the with our legislators, with our governor, and what that might look like. The concern is that if we don't do something sooner than later, you know, to get $400 million in the next 5 years, it's going to take time. And so that's why we're putting this out there now. And as Mr. Valley knows, we don't have control over to be able to raise gas tax or whatever else. That's a legislative body that's doing that. So we're continuing to engage in them and what that might look like here in the near future. If we do not get special funding, we will have to make some major changes in our STIP, and to the degree that perhaps pavements or other assets that we're going to have to replace are going to have to be put on hold, because, you know, to take down the bridge at Forest City, to put it out of commission, that's a very long detour. And so those are hard decisions that we'll have to make with you guys relative to what we're going to do if that doesn't come in.
That Plattwater Bridge, is that plans gonna go out to bid coming up, and when's that projection to start, or?
So the key with that bridge, it is ready to go. We've got everything in line with it, and the CDS, or the earmark for that $30 million, will help, but we still have an application out there with Federal Highway to get additional money, and so we're waiting. In fact, I just sent an email to Deputy Secretary yesterday, USDOT, asking when is that going to be announced as far as the award of those contracts. Kind of key for us right now to be able to decide whether or not to let that here this year, or maybe have to delay it based on those federal funds that we're waiting on.
Just real quickly,
Yes, sir.
how long does that 25 million that we got for the Plattwater Bridge last?
It's 4 years obligation
4 years,
Yep.
okay, all right,
limitation on it.
thank you.
Yep. So the, I'm gonna grab a drink here, my voice is going. So state funds is the fuel tax and the excise tax, I've already mentioned those earlier. On the federal side, we've got the program relative to IDJA. It's our bridge formula funds, which are dedicated funds for bridges only. We've got some highway infrastructure program funds, and then competitive grant program. That was the one that I just talked about as far as what we're waiting on for that to come in. So it's very similar to what we had on the pavement side. Here's what we're looking on the bridge side. So this provides you the historically where that value has been, and now what we're looking at projecting in the future. The yellow dot, the lines with the yellow dot, is if we do not receive any special funds for these structures, that's what we're projecting our condition will be, which is a fairly significant drop from an overall rating standpoint. Again, we've got the seed planted, and hopefully that it gets some action here sooner than later. The other performance measure is our customer satisfaction, and as you know, we go out and we've been doing this for quite a number of years. About every 3 years, we have an independent consultant do a survey and then ask a whole bunch of questions to our citizens in a random situation relative to how is the DOT performing overall, and if you were king for a day, where would you like to see our money be spent, which gives you guys a good indication of what we should be keying in on relative to priorities, but it also gives the department the same information. That's what we use for our strategic planning and goals and objectives when it's all said and done with. So this chart shows you, again, it is a very snapshot in time based on the results of that survey, in the eyes of our citizens, how we are doing. And you can see that our overall rating is about 75%, which continues to climb. The results of this survey are the best that we've ever seen since we've been doing surveys in the past. The chart below it, which is about 45%, is what our surrounding states result was. What I found out, especially from the consultant, that there's a number of DOTs in our surrounding area, which is called the North Central states, actually have adversary relationships with their citizens. So good for us to be on the other side, as well as seeing some pretty positive numbers. This one really shows you 6 other different areas. I'm not gonna go through these, but again, numbers for us are really good. Doesn't mean that we cannot continue to improve, and we're looking at how we can do that in the near future. And then, as I mentioned, what would the citizens like to see us, where would they like to see you put our money? And so the top one here is repairing and maintaining the existing systems, not to go out and build brand new highways out there. That was number 1. 2, continue to make safety improvements on those highways. And the third one is a little surprising, but it's looking at services that we provide for seniors and persons with disabilities, and to continue to look at how we can enhance upon those funding. As you recall, you provide, we have the criteria set up for how we divvy out those state funds to our public transit providers. And with that, you don't provide how much money we're actually going to give. That goes over to the legislators from a budgetary standpoint. But again, looking at how we can continue to increase this. And I think what we agreed to relative to the study here with the legislators here will help with that whole thing when it's all said and done. Moving on to revenue and funding. So as you know, our motor fuel revenues, the gas tax, here's the history. It's back from 2018 and where we're at today. We had the one spike from 21 to 22, which was real nice, but it went back down again. And we're projecting that the revenues on this end are going to be flat, if not to decline here in the near future, as the legacy vehicles, the old vehicles, get replaced with newer vehicles. As you know, those newer vehicles have better fuel economy than the old ones does, and so that will, the number of vehicles that are bought and sold in the state is really not changing a lot. In fact, the next slide I'll talk a little more about that. But overall, the revenues for gas tax is flat to probably going down.
Just for proper perspective, that spike at 189, our tax is static per gallon. If the price of gallon goes up, we get the same amount per gallon. So obviously what happened, there was a lot of fuel got used. What was that, COVID, or what was it?
It was post-COVID. I don't know if people were feeling that they were bound up and couldn't get out and went out and,
Like a lot of
explored,
that,
and
people coming to the hills.
a lot of people,
Yeah.
tourists and others coming in. They had some record years.
And they spend their money, and the next year they stay home.
Yeah, well, which was good. They came to South Dakota and spent their money. But again, it's not looking positive for any major increases in the next few years. On the flip side is the vehicle excise tax, which is 4 cents for every vehicle that is sold in this state. And our peak was in 2024 at 179 million. It went down in 25, and this year we're actually projecting that it's going to be flat or even decrease. As we talked to the Department of Revenue, what they stated is on average it's about 400,000 vehicles that are purchased and sold in this state. And last year they saw a decline of 70,000 vehicles. So again, as you're looking at the price of vehicles, those continue to go up, and where people are at from their own pocketbook and maybe the economy, assuming that there was some apprehension to go out and spend that kind of money, and so we'll see where that goes. But again, we just don't project this is going to continue to increase. Even though vehicles continue to increase in price, which helps with the revenue side, if they're not going to buy, then that would be a reduction in how many vehicles are bought and sold.
I just want you to know I'll keep trying to do the best I can with my old cars. Get out there and drive them.
Well, the wife and I provided funding here this last year on that one, so.
Hey, how much is the gas tax?
28 cents, yep.
And if you raise that?
It was 22, Senator Valley was instrumental in getting it to 28 cents in 2015. And looking at where we're at today, we need to do something.
Also, with the new administration, is the pressure with the electric? I mean, they had the mandates before 2030, and I know that's gone quiet, but is that a question you would know the answer to? Is it something that?
So, great question. I believe it was the House bill that did not get included in the overall, there was going to be a $250 fee on both electric and hybrid. That got wiped out, so that federal one did not take place. I failed to mention that there's a bill right now this year to raise the plug-in electric from $50 per vehicle to $100 per vehicle, and that did pass both houses. So I'm assuming the governor will probably sign that. It'll provide a little additional revenue. I think the number of electric vehicles in the state was mentioned to be about 4,400. So it's not a lot of money, but it's still a little bit. And it was Senator Weems that what sponsored the bill. It was more based on the fairness of what they pay to use the public roads versus, the $50. Question.
Editorial comment quickly. The 6 cents was 10 cents, and in order to get it done, the last day, 2 days of the session, I made a deal at 6 cents. So it was designed to be at 10 cents, which would have made a difference. The other thing is, on the excise tax, that initially was put in, when it was initially put in, it was supposed to track the sales tax. And we hadn't for a long time. We brought it up to be in tracking with the sales tax. We have now raised the sales tax and we have not followed the tracking. So just keep that in the back of your mind as something we could look at. I'm not trying to advocate tax, but we're going to have to raise some money somehow, and those were the designs at that time.
Yeah, and some states actually have it such that it changes based on inflation or whatever else, and we were not.
I tried.
Mr. Val, I can tell you all, he's got great history on that, just to make it an inflationary thing as opposed to a set rate, as you mentioned. No matter what the gas price is, it's 28 cents flat rate, so. This is the overall highway fund revenues, going again back to 2018 to 2025. We are projecting that it'll continue to be flat and maybe even decline to a slight rate here in the near distance future. So it was down last year, and it's looking like it'll probably be down a little bit more this year. So working with them on that. As you folks know, you provide funding to the local governments, both on the federal side, here what you just did with the bridge improvement grants, and you can look at all of those different areas, and this is the total that we're anticipating that we're going to be recommending to you through these different programs for about $92 million. We have not fully, typically in April and May, we'll provide the funding, the STP funding to the counties and to the cities. So that'll be coming up here soon. We'll transfer those into their different accounts. So we've talked about the federal highway bill numerous times. This is what that bill provided from an appropriation standpoint. It was about 2% increase after 2022. I just mentioned in my report that was funded here for this last fiscal year. It expires in September. And again, we are hopeful that they will put some sort of an inflationary aspect in the next bill to keep that going. Because as you know, inflation is all hitting us very hard. What cost us to do a mile of reconstruction of a rural road back in 2015, 2018 was about 1.1 million. And today it's almost $2 million. So our purchasing power for both state and federal tax has gone down quite a bit, quite significantly. So again, hopefully they do something with that. Here is on the operational side, which you guys don't get too involved in. It's really more from a legislative standpoint. But in 2020, what it cost us to buy a snowplow truck was about $280,000. Today, it's costing us $420,000. To do a 3-yard loader is about $210,000, and it's now costing us $325,000. And on the our building side of the equation, we're seeing about 103% increase, and I'm sure, Mr. Simons, you're seeing very similar things as far as what it's costing you to maintain your equipment as well as buy new. Overall, this is something we put in our annual report. That's the total dollar values for highway and transit that we receive in revenue and what we physically spend out on, that was for 2025 year. So again, I'm not gonna go through the numbers, but I think it's good kind of to see where all the different buckets and the categories that we have that went through us. I'm gonna go through the other modes of transportation here, talking about aeronautics first. South Dakota is a channelizing state, which means that we do not own any of the airports. They are owned publicly by the cities and different entities. But any funding that FAA provides to them, they have to come through us. So our office through Office of Rail, Aeronautics, and Transit are the ones that then do the oversight for these. But FAA is truly the entity that decides which projects are physically going to be funded for that specific year. What the State Aeronautics Commission does then is decide whether or not they're eligible for state funds and then provides that match on those. Here's all the public airports that are in the state. There's 70 of those, 5 of those are commercials. But not all of these are eligible for federal funds. Only 54 of those are eligible. And they have to be on the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, and another acronym is the NIPIAS program. But again, as I mentioned earlier, it's about $45 million for the airport improvement program that is done overall. We are responsible to inspect all the general aviation, so those are anything that are commercial. And so we have an individual that goes out and does all of those and then reports those back, and eventually then the Aeronautics Commission will certify that they are meeting FAA requirements based on that inspection.
No question on that.
Yes, sir.
Watertown's an essential airport designated that way. How many of those in the state?
5. So you've got Watertown, Aberdeen, Pierre, and then Rapid City and Sioux Falls on the other 2 ends, our commercial airports. Yep. So Sioux Falls has an authority that has oversight of their airport, whereas Rapid City, it's a city of Rapid City. So talk a little bit about funding. Again, the core program for that is called the Airport Improvement Program, or AIP, and it really is kind of the meat and potatoes. There's also through the Surface Transportation Bill, or IJA, there's supplemental AIP as well as terminal funding. So Rapid City and Sioux Falls has received funding relative to that program. And then there's the discretionary grants that the FAA looked at from a national level. Again, these airports put in projects for those. They look at that at national and decide which ones are going to fund for that specific year. Again, the state provides the technical assistance. The Aeronautics Commission provides a 2.5% state match. And then in 24, if you recall, the state legislators provided $10 million to be awarded for terminal projects. And so we went through a process relative to which projects the commission wanted to fund, and there was a different breakdown relative to those. So, Mr. Roby, here's kind of what you see relative to the difference between a commercial airport, which was those 5, as well as the difference between the GA airports. And though the commercial airports definitely do have larger revenue streams that come in, they're able to charge for parking and the concessions and everything else with those. They are eligible for more federal funds, especially through the terminal programs that are out there. They actually receive entitlement funds based on the number of employments that they have coming through their airports. And then the PCF, or the passenger facility charges, they can use those dollars that are charged for each person that is flying through that for, again, FAA approved projects to enhance the capacity, safety, and reduce noise. The GAs are really smaller airports. They don't have the ability to generate large revenues. Typically, if they have a project they have to build up for what they're receiving, they receive $150,000 on an annual basis, and then they will take those funds, wait until they have enough to be able to provide that other 2.5% match on their projects. So they're very reliant on the AIP and the state local match on those. Here's again the breakdown relative to the AIP program: 95% FAA. The other 2, as I've already mentioned, I talked about the state being a channelizing act state, which in essence coordinates with FAA and the local sponsors who are hiring consultants to get their projects all ready to go. We do not do any of the design on those. The airports hire those consultants, work with FAA, and eventually FAA decides which projects are going to be approved.
The $150,000 they get every year, is that on a time frame too? They keep that forever, or they gotta spend it with this many years?
They have to spend it within a certain time period, and if their projects are not ready to go, they're actually can swap with another airport. So let's say Yankton says, I don't have enough money, can I borrow from another GA? Knowing that I'm gonna lose my money if I don't. And so that exchange and those swaps take place to really capitalize to be able to get their projects done, which is a great thing that the FAA allows to take place.
Real quick, remind me of how we get our 2.5% money to give to the fund? Is that a-
Could I hold that? Could I hold that?
Sure.
Just for a second, cause I've got a chart with that. And then again, as the projects get let by the local governments, the contractors send in a bill to the local government, they pay it, they send it to us, we pay the local government, and then we ask the FAA to pay us back, and then that money goes back into our coffers. So it's all on a reimbursement, just like our highway projects. There's not a lump that they get put into their bank that they can go spend, so as I mentioned, 2024 legislation, Senate Bill 144, there are the airports that ended up with funding to be able to do their projects. Again, for Rapid City and Sioux Falls, definitely not overall what they needed, but they did take the lion's share of that $10 million. We had two other airports, Hot Springs and T, that had requested funding. They were allocated funding, but in the end, they decided they weren't gonna be able to do their projects, so they brought those monies back in, and then we repurposed them. And because those other airports had all of the money that they needed, they went back into with Rapid City and Sioux Falls that tie into the overall dollar value that you see there. So here's the aeronautics fund revenue, and overall there's really two major sources that come into this fund. One is for jet fuel and AV taxes, 3%, 4% on top of that, 3% for AV. The other one is when an airplane gets sold in this state, there's that excise tax that goes on it. And so overall, and I didn't have this, we had on the joint. I do have it. Let me click on here. So you see there was a very high dollar amount from last year that came in relative to the excise tax. It really depends upon what is the value of that airplane. Well, there were some pretty high valued airplanes that got sold last year. So the price was high, excise tax goes on that, we received 5.75 million. Typically it's been in the range of about 2 million overall. That's the one major source. And again, we're not projecting that we're gonna see that here this year or next year. The other one is again on the revenues for fuel, and you can see, oh, excuse me, this is for the overall. The other one, I apologize, that was for the fuel. That's in the neighborhood of about $1 million, and it really hasn't changed much overall for the last number of years. So this is the chart that shows all of the funds that come into the aeronautics fund. And again, that major spike was based on the fact that there were some pretty expensive planes that were bought and sold last year. Does that answer your question, Mr. Riley?
Yeah, most of it's coming from those two things, just like on the
Yep.
road funds.
Yep.
Okay.
That excise tax on new planes and used planes?
Any plane, just like it is on a vehicle. Here's the overall fund. There was a couple bills that were up that we testified for and ended up with a modification on another one, our amendment. The reason why this fund, well, one, the fund was in dire need, and the legislators had to put $4 million back into it because it was getting to a point where we're not going to be able to fully fund everything that was needed. In fact, the Aeronautics Commission capped any airport terminal at $200,000, as well as they said we're not going to provide any state funds for any revenue producing projects such as new hangars and those types of things. That still is out there, and they need to probably look at this and make a decision if they want to make changes with that. The reason why it continued to increase is during the COVID years, the match was 100% federal, so there was no state funds coming out of this. And the way we project this out is we ask all the airport, what are your projects coming up in the next 5 years? And then based on the value of those projects, taking the 2.5%. So we're doing really well on this fund, but it's only going to take a couple big projects. The one that I remember relative to why this is going to be dipping down is the city of Rapid City has their runway that needs to be completely reconstructed, and that's gonna be a pretty high dollar value. But again, working with the airports and looking at what this looks like in the next 5 years. But right now, it's not sitting too bad. Moving on to public transit, which you guys have been involved in a lot. Again, this is transportation that our rural transit providers, as well as the urban transit providers with the elderly, the disabled, and children, and really those with low income, to be able to help get them to the different locations, whether it's a hospital or grocery store or whatever it might be. And overall, a lot of the funding is for operating expenses. And typically it's not a set value, it's about 50-50 match though on those. The capital improvement, which is the buses and bus barns, there is no state funds in those at all. It's 80% federal and 20% local. This is the graph of all of the different transit providers in the state, and they really have done a great job. Some of these have been consolidated to reduce the amount of administrative costs that they've been having, but again, we work very closely with them to provide those funds. Again, it's federal funded through FTA, Federal Transit Administration. We are the ones that administer the program overall, not only the federal funds, but also the state funds, and work with these providers relative to that. So we've got 13 rural providers that you can see up on the screen. We've got one intercity bus provider, who is Jefferson Lines, and these rural providers tie into their line. And then we've got 15 specialized transit systems such as Black Hills Works and Lifescape that provide funding. And then the 2 urban ones in Rapid City and Sioux Falls, again, that are out there to help from an urban standpoint. In 2024, there was 1,151,000 rides, which was up, but it's still not to the degree of where it was at pre-COVID, which was 1.5 million. So again, they're increasing, and they're seeing the same things that everybody else is. Prices are much higher. Labor, getting labor has been difficult for them, and so we continue to work with them to see what we might be able to provide relative to that. Yes, sir.
The intercity
Yes, sir.
lines,
Yes,
where
sir.
do they run?
They run from Sioux Falls to Rapid.
Do they stop?
Yes, on numerous different locations throughout
We
the
have
state.
nothing in the top tier of the state.
I do not.
Just Interstate 90, basically.
I'm gonna have to check on that.
Okay.
Maybe Don, do you know?
Bus services?
Huh?
I have a follow-on question.
Okay.
That competes with bus services.
Private bus services.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
They squawk about that?
I do not know. Again, they receive these federal funds just like the rural transit providers do. In fact, it's required that we give them a specific amount of that program. There's been years in the past where they didn't need all of that, and so they, in essence, brought it back, and the rural providers were then received that. But at this point in time, for this year, they're using that entire allocation for their service.
Any qualifications I gotta have to ride the bus?
No. Nope. In fact, River City, if you want to call them up and you just schedule a pickup time and away you go. State-owned railroads, one of my other favorite modes of transportation. Again, we met yesterday on the Napa to Platte. We work really closely with the Railroad Board on the state-owned assets. If you remember, we sold the Mitchell to Rapid City line and the Sioux Valley line back in 2021. That was a big effort for us to invest back into those lines and get them up and running, and then again, the overall goal is put them back into private hands where additional economic development can take place. And so very proud of what the state did relative to those, and Watco purchased the MRC line, and D&I purchased the Sioux Valley line, and those are up and running and working very well. So here's what we still had under ownership as of first part of the year. Actually, RCP&E came to the board and requested to purchase the Huron the Yale line, which goes from here into the northeast, as well as the Woolsey interchange. The board accepted that proposal, and now Carla is working through all of the agreements and legal documents to get that transaction to take place. So that leaves really only 2 lines left for us: the Napa to Platte line and the Britton line, which is from Aberdeen, and we actually own rail line up in North Dakota. The Napa to Platte line was discussed yesterday. We went out for invitation for proposals for somebody to either lease that line or to purchase that line, because we ended up terminating the lease with the leasee here, was that back in October, November timeframe. We were due money and they were not following through paying us, as well as we had some issues relative to the maintenance. Of those 4 proposals, the commission decided yesterday to not accept any of those proposals, and with that, the major reason that I would say was, in fact, all of those proposals in essence required the state to provide major dollars to upgrade that line in the tune of, I think we talked about $40 million. So our recommendation was not to take those, and instead to engage in an economical feasibility study to truly figure out whether or not, if we invest in those monies, are we actually going to receive a return on our money when it's all said and done with. So they approved that. We'll work with a GOD, Danner, relative to that, and bring the partners together. But on the MRC line, we actually had some form of commitment that if we were to invest in the line, that the different entities would upgrade their elevators and those types of things. So those are the things that really need to be looked at relative to this line. That study will probably take us about 18 months to finish, but when it's all said and done with, I think it's going to give the state a lot better understanding, as well as what the board might be looking at as far as how much should we invest. The other thing that they did, the section from Platte to Tyndall is rail banked. And because we decided not to do anything with that other section, which is from Tyndall to the Napa Junction, they also agreed to file with the STB to put that section in rail bank. So that if it's approved by STB, the entire section will be rail banked, which means that it still preserves that corridor for rail service without the thought that it's abandoned. The state has abandoned that line. So we will continue to work through this and figure out what might be the most prudent investment for this line here in the near future.
Nothing with the Napa deal, but I'm curious about the Huron to Yale. That's about a 6-8 mile line that the state owns, and so they have offered to buy that. I know that rail line continues, and it ends up in Minnesota. Has that been, or is that no longer around?
So that line ties into BNSF's line, and that is an active line.
It is an active line.
And there's not a lot of shipment that goes on the Yale line currently right now. In fact, we're getting only a couple $100 on payment overall, but I think it, again, to get these in private hands, that give that, RCP&E was the one that was leasing it, give them the ability to look at, shippers and other folks to truly invest in the line to get it up to a spot where it's gonna be much more serviceable when it's all said and done with.
So currently, what that discussion is on the 6-7 miles to Yale and not beyond.
That is the only section that the state owned.
Okay.
The rest is in private hand with BNSF.
Okay.
So now it'll be purchased by RCP&E, and they will work with BNSF going in and out of that.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Is the balance of the MRC line in the western part from somewhere, let's say Vivian West, is that rail bank? All of it?
No, sir. The piece to Kadoka is not rail banked. So from Presho to Kadoka is not rail banked, but the section from Kadoka to Rapid City is rail banked.
Okay.
And the state maintained to be the rail sponsor on that because Watco did not want to take on that responsibility. Okay. So we still pay to do weed spraying and whatever else on the rail bank section that I mentioned.
Okay, and the rest of it though is that could be, you could go to Kadoka?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And that really ties into my next point on that, which was what I mentioned earlier with, since we do not have passenger rail, we received $27 million approximately from FRA on what they call Special Transportation Circumstance, STC funds. We're waiting for that notice of funding opportunity to come out. We're looking at about $69 million that would be available for this year. It's 2 years combined, and plus we had a little bit of funds that we didn't expend overall. And so what will happen is the rail board will get that notice from FRA. We'll send out a notice to anybody and everybody and say these funds are available. Submit a project. They'll present those to the rail board, and then the rail board will decide which projects to fund relative to the federals. And so we'll send those into FRA. So if Watco decided that, you know what, I'd like to request funding to upgrade the line from Presso to Myrtle, that would be a request from them to the rail board to utilize these STC funds. Again, with those STC projects, there is a lot of work on the rail side of our lives right now. And the big one was, if you recall, the state legislators provided $20 million to RCP&E to upgrade the line from Fort Pierre to Rapid City. That's been in the works now for a couple years, and it should be done by this summer. And RCP&E has already got a number of those sections done where they're now able to go from, I don't know where they go, 5 mile an hour walking distance to 25 mile an hour. So it's really enhanced upon their abilities to move freight. And overall, about 195 million that you see here. And as part of this, again, we have to request budget authority with the legislators to be able to put money in, to be able to have that authority to do these projects. And so we've got to, part of our general appropriations bill is to add an additional $40 million of authority for these projects that are here that you see today. That's it.
Just as an editorial comment, as the secretary said, he has to do this every year, and I put that into law. The main reason for that was that when I was trying to raise money for DOT, well, I didn't know that we had a problem. I didn't know we had a problem, so I says, okay, we're gonna make sure that, and it has to be on what's needed in a 10-year basis. I says, well, I wanna look out, here's what our costs are, and here's what we're gonna take in. And if we got a problem, I want to make sure all the legislators know about it so that they don't say, well, no one ever told me about that. And that was the reason that I stuck them with, the main thing was I wanted a 10-year projection out for all our transportation networks so that we could see what we're running into before we get there. So
Mr. Chairman, it was definitely a great language to put in. In fact, not only do it to the House and the Senate Transportation, but we also do it to the Joint Committee of Appropriations. Those projections and looking at the numbers and everything else, and there's typically lots of questions with JCA on those things too. So, any other questions for me? If not, it sounds like we still need you to take action on something.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Little housekeeping, we need to have a motion for the transportation alternative program to be added to the STIP. So we approved these, but we need a motion for the STIP, so. Charlie will move. Rosen moves.
Thank you.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed nay. Motion carries. Anything else? If not, next meeting's Thursday, March 12th, on the phone. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
was there many questions at the committee about, we don't have enough money
You are listening to South Dakota Public Broadcasting's live webcast service on the South Dakota Network. More information at sd.net. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of SDPB. Links to live events and their archives are available at sd.net.